All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. And the board is now reconvened in open session at 9:09. We'll now consider action on our closed session items. Who has a motion down there? Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, Madam President. I move that the Board of Trustees accept the hearing officer's recommendation concerning the FNG complaint Level 3 appeal of Jorge and Norma Aguanina.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Thank you very much. Do we have another motion? Mrs. Tossan. Sorry.
Yes, Madam President. I move that the Board of Trustees schedule the meeting to consider the Level 3 DGBA employee grievance appeal of Cecil Johnson at a subsequent meeting of the Board of Trustees.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Thank you very much. Do we have another motion, Mrs. Tossan?
Yes, I have a second motion. I move that the Board approve the settlement recommendation in TEA docket number 25-SE-0514 and delegate authority to the superintendent to execute a settlement and release agreement subject to approval of Board Council.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Thank you very much. Mrs. Bailey.
Yes, I move to appoint David Moore to the position of Director of Facilities.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bailey and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Mr. Burdine, do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam President. I move that the Board of Trustees assign the Level 3 DGBA employee grievance appeal of Sharon Kuban, Jacinto Williams, Nancy Turner, and Darlene Brown to Richard Hightower, who will serve as the Board's designated hearing officer under Board Policy DGBA Local.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Burdine and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Thank you. The motion passes. Do we have any more motions from closed session? Mrs. Bailey, your yellow piece of paper. No, it's not. Okay.
Sorry about that. I move that the Board approve the amendment of the superintendent's contract as presented by Board Council, including 1, extending the contract through April 30th, 2018, 2, providing for a 5% salary increase, and 3, adding 10 vacation days.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bailey and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Thank you very much. I think that's all of our actions from closed session. Is that correct? Is someone checking them off? Thank you. All right, that concludes our closed session action. So I think we're ready now to go back to our information items. So I'll turn the meeting over to you, Dr. Dupree, to introduce our one remaining information item.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Yes, the item we'd like to start out with now has to do with the academies. As you'll recall, at last week's board meeting, Dr. Whitbeck and the administration presented a proposal regarding career pathways in Fort Bend ISD. We also presented a proposal that would begin phasing out of the academies beginning next fall. As you can tell, and why one of the reasons this room is so crowded tonight, I believe, is that on Thursday night, I announced my decision to withdraw that recommendation from the board's consideration. It's been an interesting few days since that time because there's been a number of mixed reactions. And so I wanted to address those things, kind of how I arrived at that decision and your reactions since that time. I want to share a little bit with the audience and in particular with the board regarding the last week. I think it's important to note that in Fort Bend ISD, we are all committed to listening to the community's feedback, to considering everything we hear, and to responding. During the past year, I will say, and I think staff and the board would agree, it's been a very long year. We've taken on many, many challenges. We've done a lot of facilities planning. We've passed a major bond in a big way. We're looking at feeder patterns district-wide, and we're taking on the issue of rolling out House Bill 5, which directly relates to academies. I believe that we did an outstanding job of putting together a plan to address House Bill 5 in this district, and that I'm confident that the career pathways are going to be very, very successful. Several key members of our staff spent hours and hours and hours developing that plan, visiting every campus, every academy, talking to teachers, academy coordinators, students, principals, and really even members of our community to put together career pathways that are going to substantially increase the level of opportunity for every single student in our district. When we reported that out last week, it was easy to see that many schools have very limited opportunities today, and they're going to have greater opportunities in the future. So I think we've done some outstanding work, and I applaud the team who brought all that forward. At the same time, and in the same meeting, though, we also announced a plan to phase out academies. And so that's been the point of conversation in the last week. And so you need to know that even immediately after that meeting, well, I should say going into that meeting, we had many conversations among the team about what do we do with academies? Where do they fit with career pathways? Is there a place for them? And we went round and round and round, and we finally determined it would be best to propose phasing them out. Well, as soon as we said that publicly, Monday night, I began to have some reservations about that, and with the same reservations we'd really been having all along. And then Tuesday came, and we talked about it some more. We talked among staff some more, and I kept thinking further and further about it. And then we had about 400 people show up for a meeting Tuesday night. And I want you to understand something about what I'm about to say. We had a whole lot of people in that meeting. And some people in this community now have the perception that we've simply caved in to loud voices and people protesting with signs and being loud and ugly in public. And I want you to know that's not the case. What I listened to were the people who were reasonable, who made very level-headed who shared level-headed thinking with me that helped me to see very clearly what we missed is the small gap that if we begin to phase out academies right now, before pathways are fully developed, we really are pulling something away before we have a solid alternative for people who value and care about and feel like they're getting a great experience in academies. And so I want you to understand it was those quiet conversations and a few reserved emails that really helped me to see that was a pretty obvious gap in our plan. It doesn't mean our plan was horrible. It doesn't mean we made a mistake, but it does mean sometimes as leaders we have to pull back and reflect on, is this the right thing at the right time? I made the decision on Wednesday that we needed to take action, and on Thursday we got to the meeting and we rolled that out. And so I have to tell you again, this is where I have to accept responsibility as superintendent of this district. I feel like I misstepped in announcing that before I had a chance to meet with the school board tonight. On that evening, I felt like I was acting in my authority as superintendent to withdraw a recommendation I had made to the Board of Trustees, and I felt very comfortable doing that. What I failed to fully recognize, though, was the impact that would have in the community and how people would perceive my relationship with the board and the board's authority in this issue. And so I think it's very important that you know, and that for the record, we're all very clear, that I report to the board. They do not report to me. They do not do what I say. I work with them as a solid team. And I think that my action last week sent maybe the wrong signal. And so I want to make it very clear that I made a statement that I did not plan to bring forth a recommendation to eliminate academies in the future. And I meant that when I said it, and I still mean that. But that does not preclude the board's opportunity to work with me and the administration to draft policy or to take other actions that could affect the academies in the future. The fact is, I believe, and I'll just be brutally honest, I believe that when our pathways are running the way they need to run in a few years, many students will opt out of academies because they're going to have outstanding opportunities at their campuses anyway. So I think really what we're talking about is a more bridge opportunity on how we go from where we are today to where we need to be. And that's a conversation I need to have with the Board of Trustees, and that we as administrators need to put together additional recommendations to bring forth to the board for their consideration. But I just think it's very clear that we all understand that I would not and I cannot speak for the board, and I would never, ever intentionally undermine their authority or put them in a position where they could not take appropriate action for fear that the administration said one thing and now the board is doing something different. And so I think that kind of brings me to where we are tonight. The intent, and one of the reasons I wanted to put this on the agenda again tonight was, as I said at the meeting Thursday, was we need to have a conversation. Whether I said it Thursday night or whether I said it tonight for the first time, I believe we need to reconsider that decision to begin phasing out academies this coming fall. I think there's a number of questions we need to address, and I know I definitely want to get the board's opinion on that. So I will tell you the first things on my list. Well, let me go back before I start getting into details. In speaking with the community, the other thing that we're even getting emails and we're hearing some feedback right now that some members in the community have the perception nothing would change about the academies. And that my comment had basically said everything's going to remain status quo. And so I need to be very clear that that is not the case. We still need to consider how when we keep the academies, we need to determine what that looks like, where they will be placed, and what those programs will look like. As we've done all this feeder pattern work, as you've heard a full presentation earlier, one of the most important things we've said repeatedly is that academies will be placed where we have space available in the district. We are doing all of our work on feeder patterns based on zoned students who live in the new attendance zone without consideration for transfer students due to the academies or any other transfer. And so I don't want anyone to lose sight of that fact, that we do need to get through the feeder pattern work before we would determine where any academy would go, no matter what the academies look like. And so with that in mind, my key areas, and we've actually started work on this already, is we do need to determine what and how academies, where they would be placed for the foreseeable future. I also think that may mean we have 2 or 3 at one campus where we have adequate space for that. It might mean we have one singleton. It may mean some stay where they're at today because there's plenty of room at that campus. We can't answer that question until we finalize the feeder patterns in January. I would also add there's a number of concerns about the academies that have been expressed over the last year, and we need to address those issues. Number one, we need to begin a common application and admissions process. It's administrated from a district level that assures equity and accessibility to any student who desires entrance into academies. We also need to look carefully at the acceptance and retention policy. Again, we hear concerns expressed that all the academies have standards that must be maintained by students, but not all academies are enforcing those standards, and that maybe some students are allowed to stay in academies and at a transferred campus even though they're not performing at the level that's requested of academy students. So we need to fix that and standardize and systematize that approach. We also have a major issue that's been well expressed during the past year about how academy students affect the class rank in our high schools and how that impacts the zone students and their college admissions and scholarship opportunities based on their class ranks and competing with students in the academies. So we need to look at that issue and how we're going to resolve that. We also need to look at how academies interact directly with the pathways that we're establishing. Some of our academies today do not represent career pathways that would be in compliance with the House Bill 5 endorsements. So we need to address that and make sure any academy does help those students meet the full requirements of House Bill 5. Those are the main things that come to our list. I'm sure there's some other things that'll come up as we begin our work. But for the board's benefit, again, I appreciate the opportunity to address this evening with you. And again, you have my heartfelt apology for some of the emails you've received that might have been less than appropriate in response to my message last week. But I want you to know my goal is and will always be to serve this board and to work with this board as a team in a way that this community can see we're all operating toward one mission and one goal on behalf of all students in Fort Bend ISD. So with that, what I'd like to do is just open the floor to board's feedback and conversation as we can maybe dialogue for a few minutes about where we go from here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dupree. Thank you for that introduction and the comments that you made. We appreciate that very much, and we look forward to working with you on developing a plan to move forward. We have a lot of things to do in our district in the next 6 months and the next years to come, and we're looking forward to working with you on accomplishing those things. So at this time, I think if the board has any comments on academies or I guess House Bill 5 pathways, this would be the time to make those comments. And maybe I might start with a question. If there's anything on the list that Dr. Dupree read to us that we feel needs to be added to the list? Is there anything that was missing from the list or that needs to be added? Or do you have any comments on the things on the list? Mr. Burdine.
I wanted for you to address to the public the proper way to communicate with us on community engagement. I was asked by some community members on that. Is it, or Dr. Dupree?
Yes, I mean, I think, you're talking, yes, okay, as you know, we've been through a number of planning processes in the last year, and we've really gotten a solid system where we do our community dialogue meetings. Some people are frustrated by the term community dialogue because they feel like it's one way, but I think what we have found is we hear from more taxpayers, more citizens in the way that we're doing the process now. Because when you have an open mic, you only hear from a few people who are willing to go to the microphone and speak. But when you have written feedback from anyone and everyone, and then we incorporate that into a frequently asked question list that we post and we respond to the questions publicly, it doesn't always feel like a dialogue to those in the audience, but the intent is to allow everyone there to have a voice and have their questions responded to. So that's what we're trying to do. We also, though, in the last several months in particular, we're getting a lot of feedback from many different sources. The best way to have your voice heard is to truly go through the established channels, which in this feeder pattern process has been the web link and the survey that is online. Many people complete that and then also send emails, or we might get from one community a petition or various emails from the same email from many, many people in that community. And that's all fine, and we read all of those, but in the end, the proper formal channel to give the feedback is through the portal that we established to provide that feedback. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. In other words, they can go to our Fort Bend ISD website,
Correct.
log on to the survey, and fill that out as necessary.
Yes.
And I will say, as we talked about earlier with the feeder pattern alignment proposal, all of that information is gathered, it's collated, it's vetted, it's looked through, individual comments are considered. So it's important for the public to realize that all of those things are considered and they're managed in a really systematic way when they go through the website portal. All right. Any other comments that we have? Do we have any other concerns? Is there any other, one of the things that came to my mind this week is that maybe we need to start thinking about a policy that might address how we do secondary education in Fort Bend ISD. I don't know, we had a little bit of discussion about that this summer at one of our workshops. We've got a whole arena of pathways, endorsements and pathways, I should say, that are going to be coming into fruition. Does the board have any comments on that? Is that something that, and I'm not saying that's next month or even the month after, but maybe as we go through the next few months, we would sort of look towards putting something together. What would your thoughts be, Mrs. Bailey?
Just a few comments on that. I think that admin's been doing a really hard work focusing on a lot of these issues on the academies and some of the problems that we're having. And I would like to have them tackle it first, maybe, and bring a policy forward to us. I think some of the things that I am hearing out in the community is definitely GPA rank and the effect the academies are having on students that don't come to ninth grade with 6 to 7 high school courses. So we have to consider all of our kids, not just a portion of them. So I would like to see a policy that if we want to allow these students to take all these high school courses before they even start ninth grade, we have to weight them differently. And I think, Mr. Rosenthal, you had talked about we really need to see how those high school courses are impacting that top 10%, especially when one is at a school with high achieving students as it is. And it's really cutthroat at that school. I know people who actually move out of that zone because they don't want their children in it. Believe it or not, I got emails from academy parents wanting to go to other academies to escape that school. So I thought that was interesting. I think academies have a lot of benefits, advantages, but they also have a lot of disadvantages to our regular students. I know you all are actually addressing that, I think. One of the things that I'd like to see explored, and I know I'm getting off topic here, is to put...
We won't let you stray too far off the topic.
Okay. Is one thing the Building Utilization Committee looked at in 2012 was putting the academies at one campus. And they came up with a really nice spreadsheet and showed you that moving the academies to one campus actually balanced the rest of our high schools. And that was assuming all the kids would go to that one high school that we would put it at. Another thing that was interesting, let me find it here, actually have the presentation from that, is they gave a map and they put the density of where these kids are coming from. And it's very interesting to see the dense blue in the Elkins, Clements, obviously Hightower area, and how light blue it is when you get out to Bush in that, exterior part of the district. So I just thought it was interesting. I mean, evidently, kids come from all over the district. It showed that. But it also showed the density of where they're coming from. And it was particularly 2 high schools. So I would like to see us putting it at one, recommend exploring that option, and maybe making it a magnet academy. I receive lots of emails about a GT Academy up in Dallas. I mean, if it's working up in Dallas, can it work down here? So, and anyway, getting back to the policy, I would, kind of like to give admin a chance to go at that one.
Yeah, give them a chance to sort of bring ideas for a policy together. Maybe we could have a workshop about it, and then because as Mr. Rosenthal says, if it's not in policy, it doesn't exist. Mr. Rosenthal, do you have comments?
I sure do.
Okay.
I think that the policy is a good idea. However, I think that we need to have some solutions for next year, because I think that people were waiting long enough. I understand the problem. I'm glad my child's not involved with that. And it's just not, the whole GPA and ranking thing is not right. And maybe you can blame the state for their top 10% rule, or top 8%, whatever it is. I know it kind of fluctuates. But of course, that wasn't done with our district in mind, with academies. And it's not right that kids work hard, they do what they're supposed to do. They become well-rounded students, which I think is really important. I mean, this is high school, right? And it's not right for them to be denied to some of our state universities, because of some of the competition. And I really think that there's really only one way to solve this, and that's, as Mrs. Bailey was saying, to locate several of these academies at one school. And obviously, there's one school that, in particular that fits it. And that way you have those kids kind of separated, at least as far as their academy programs go. They would still participate in that school, in band, in sports, whatever, and be a part of that school. And I really think that's the only way to solve the problem. We solve transportation costs. We solve our boundary and zoning. And I think we need to really start thinking soon, because since the academies are going to stay in existence, then obviously you're going to open up the window for applications, and we need to be thinking about, is that going to start next year, where the new kids coming into an academy are already starting off at this new school as they're phasing out at the other schools, just the students, not the programs. So I don't think we should wait. I think this is a priority, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that at the same time, I think you can strengthen those programs when they're all at one school, because I think they'll feed off each other. I bet you have, one of the questions I asked you in the email is, I bet you between the math and science and the GSA, you got a lot of those students taking those same math and science classes. So, it kind of makes sense.
All right. Mr. Rice, you have some comments?
Thank you, Mrs. James. Your comment was, I think, directed towards board policy. And I would say that, yes, we need to write board policy on any special program or anything that is unique to the educational process. So in my mind, I think maybe that wasn't done when the academies were created, so certainly we need to have a policy that governs them, and a metric in place to measure the efficacy of those programs, along with the new programs recommended by the administration, the pathway, the House Bill 5 pathways, and maybe we have those metrics in place anyway. But certainly I think as we go forward, the board understands our job is to write policy that the administration will follow in prosecuting the educational aspects of the district. So I think we need to write some policy for the academies at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Do we have other comments? Mr. George, are you
Yeah.
interested in commenting?
Yeah. Yes.
I can't see your light, so I don't know. Oh, now I see it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to completely agree with many of the item Dr. Dupree mentioned, because we have to have some structure when it comes to application procedure, and also acceptance and retention, which is, all across the board. They all have different, I don't know, it is different policies. Some are enforced, some are not enforced. And the students get into these courses, they need to feel like they got into something special, and they need to treat it like that. And I'm all for that policy. And also, I don't know who lowered it in order to be maintained to be in the academy a straight 875, which is, in my opinion, it is too low. I don't know why they did it. And even at that level, I don't know anybody is enforcing it. So I'm supportive of having a higher standard so that they feel like they are in, they should treat it like it's something special. And also, class ranking is absolutely, I agree with Mr. Rosenthal, it's not fair to, if it is affecting, the students on to their high school. And if it is affecting, we have to find a way to address that issue. And we have been noticing with GSA and all that, it's been a big issue. And when you really look inside into it, and I think there is a point, and that need to be addressed. And of course, one last thing I wanted to mention here is, of course, we had discussions since Monday about academies phasing out, then withdrawing it and all that stuff. And I made some comments and statement yesterday, last Monday evening, and I did not say without academy kids, Fort Bend ISD is a mediocre district. I didn't say that. And I went back and checked that video, what I said. And what I wanted to say is, if it come out like that, and that was not my intention, and there is more than 23,000 students go to high schools in Fort Bend ISD, and we are talking about 1,800 plus students attend academies. I have no right to say others are not performing, or I have no evidence to say that. So I'm not. If it come out like that, or if some of you felt that way, I apologize for that, and because that was not my intention. And I tell you, almost 6 months on this board, after our school started, I visited a lot of schools, more than 26 of them. I did not go to an academy school so that specifically I could meet with them or this or that. I went to other school. I care about our children, every one of them, and education is a passion for me. So I just wanted to be very clear, whoever talking about, whoever mentioned, and very clear, I'm on this board. People elected me to sit on this board because people felt I care about every one of them, not just academies, and I just want to be very clear tonight. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. George. Mrs. Tassan, do you have comments?
Yes, thank you. With regard to policy, I absolutely agree that we need to get policy in place. That is something that we did discuss over the summer. I think it's a good idea for us to get something. I would probably like to see us get something sooner rather than later. I think that this is something that's going to, House Bill 5's got to be implemented next year. And so how we're going to do secondary education in this district, I think is important for us to get something in place that's going to guide and direct that. So I would like to see that happen sooner rather than later. I agree with Mr. Rosenthal that I think there are some things that need to happen next year. Some of the equity issues that I know you guys have already been working on in the schools, and I like your list, class rank and whether the academy programming meets House Bill 5. These are all important things that I think we as a board and as a district need to be sure that we're implementing properly. So I would agree with that. I think that that's something we need to look at sooner rather than later to make sure that we are addressing those issues that we know have come up. I'd also just like to comment that, you know, when we received the recommendation last week, it was sort of a global phase out, with the exception of the medical academy, I believe. And I guess I view it a little bit differently. And one of the things I like about your list is that it forces us to look specifically at the programming that's being offered. You know, whatever we call it, I think it's important that we look at the programming and whether or not it's meeting the standards that we're going to be putting in place. And that's why I think it's important to have a policy there, so that we can look at each one individually and see if it's meeting the needs of our students, see if it's meeting the policy that's in place. And I think it would be important to look at it a little more specifically than to just kind of see this global, well, we're moving in this direction and therefore this, you know, we just need to do away with this. Because I think that is one of the things, you know, I can speak personally as a board member. You know, as I was thinking through it after the recommendation came, it's hard to think of it on a global scale because you kind of have to be specific, because each program is different and it offers different things to different kids, and I think we need to look at it that way. And the last thing I would make is I mentioned this today when I was going through some of the new the updates to the feeder pattern and boundary study items. I think implementation is going, and how the implementation recommendation that we get is going to be important, because you know, when certain things happen or when we decide certain things are going to happen or is necessarily, or at least potentially, going to affect certain programs. And so I think when we get that recommendation, which I think we were told might be next month, that's going to help us put some fresh eyes on this, because, you know, if we have some high schools that are going to be at capacity, then we're obviously going to have to look at where some of these programs can be moved to. And that's the nature of it. And this is something we all knew we would potentially have to face. So I just want us to keep that in the back of our minds, because this is something, I mean, even if everything doesn't get implemented next year, it's something that we're going to have to look at in the next year or two. So I kind of feel like it's coming up quickly, and having that policy in place, I think, would help us make the right decisions as we move forward, instead of maybe some quick decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Those are great comments. And one of the things that you said, I'll just dovetail off it. One of the things that I gathered this week in talking with parents and students is that each of our academy programs has some unique qualities. They each have kind of their own strengths. Maybe not all of them, but they have some unique qualities and aspects. So I guess one of the things is to recognize that and to sort of figure out somehow to share best practices or you know, strengthen everything rather than kind of leave them as islands to fend for themselves. The other thing I learned this week is that I learned that the academies are meeting the needs of a certain student population in our district. And I think this is a little bit what you were saying, Dr. Dupree. There is a segment of the population that is interested in a competitive environment at the high school level. And that isn't necessarily what everybody would choose. There's a good segment of the population that doesn't choose that. But if we recognize that there is a segment of the population that is interested in that, then, you know, maybe there's a place for it. And how do we fit that into the overall programming? I don't know how we do that exactly, but let's call it what it is, and let's be clear about it so that we can figure out how it fits into the whole range of things that we want to offer to children so that every child can reach their full potential in a way that is appropriate and comfortable for them. So I think we have to look at it from a range of viewpoints. So those would be my comments. Do we have additional comments? Mr. Burdine?
Yes, ma'am. I'm in agreement with the policy. I think it's important that we have clear policy and where we're going, what we're doing, and how we're going to go about it. And I actually look forward to finding some way that we can condense the academy so we can strengthen them and strengthen our process. And, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And I feel that we have the capability of doing that. So consolidating those, bringing them together, and strengthening them is going to be the best option for all of Fort Bend, in my opinion.
All right, well, that sounds great, and I'm sure the administration will be interested in bringing us some options. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes, I'd like to comment on something you just stated as well. I think we all recognize that there is a segment that thrives off that competitiveness in the academics, but we also have to recognize that there's a segment that thrives off that competitiveness, but isn't interested in leaving their home school and also wants to participate along with their friends, but still be very competitive academically. And we need to make sure that they have all the tools as well. And that's why I made my comment about that last week, that, there are plenty of kids out there that they just, for whatever reason, they want to stay where they know they've been planning on going for years, but they're still competitive. They're still, they want to be number one at their school too, And so we have to consider that. We have to consider
Absolutely, and as we educate the whole child, there's more to that education than academics. There is
Exactly.
a social education, there is a physical education, there's a whole child.
And that's
That's our responsibility to
Right.
hold that.
And I think we're a much better country when we are producing well-rounded kids, and that includes interest in the fine arts. And man, I mean, for some of these kids, they're in sports and whatnot, or in, theater or whatever. This is their last chance to really thrive on the stage, because when they get to college, it gets even more competitive. And we need to really honor that and respect that and inspire that. And so we're being asked to do a lot, and we need to make sure that we get it right. And I just want to go back to last week's meeting as well. And I guess looking at the plan that Joe put forward, it seemed like a great plan. And I heard some of the feedback too, and I had some of the same questions, like, maybe what if we're not ready in 3 years with all that stuff? So I get it. I get the decision, and I'm okay with it. But we still need to act.
All right. So I'm hearing the board say we need some solutions for next year. We need to figure out how to solve some of these problems, Dr. Dupree, that you've listed, and figure out how to take action to solve some of it for next year. Do we have any other board comments or any things we need to add this time?
I was going to agree with Mr. Rosenthal that we need to act. We need to do it. So I just wanted to.
You wanted to reiterate that?
I sure did. I think it's important. It's
Critical. Thank you.
critical. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. All right.
Thank you.
All right, very well. The next item on our agenda is the audience items. I know we have a lot of audience here, so I'll ask Officer Ontiveros to come forward and give us the rules and the lowdown.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Fort Bend ISD of Trustees is an open meeting for the public to observe the board conducting district business. Therefore, audience members may address the board during the designated audience items section on the agenda. If you have any printed materials you want to give to the board members, you must provide them to the board secretary, Jane Kaiser, or to me, and we will provide them to the board. We also ask that the members of the audience be respectful of others, remain quiet during the meeting so that everybody is able to hear the proceedings. For your convenience, microphones have been provided on both sides of the boardroom. Please speak directly into the microphone if you're asked to answer a question or to address the board during the board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Ontiveros. We have quite a list of audience speakers, so the first one, we'll get right at it, is Mrs. Bailey will be, the first one is Rafi Syed, and Mrs. Bailey will be timing you. Go ahead and step up to the microphone. Mrs. Bailey will be timing you. You'll have 3 minutes, and when you have 30 seconds remaining, she will speak, or she will tell you, so warn you. And then the other thing I'd just like to remind the audience is we're here to listen, and this is not a cheering or clapping or all of that. We need to move right along. We're listening carefully. The meeting's being recorded, so we appreciate you just being quiet. Thank you so much. Mr. Syed, please.
First of all, I would like to thank leadership of FBISD for all the effort that they are putting for the long-term benefit of the district. I have one small suggestion. It is about Colony Meadows and Colony Bend school district, school zone. The Wood Stream subdivision, most of it is zoned to Colony Meadows. Just only a small portion of Wood Stream is zoned to Colony Bend. And there are no natural boundaries and the neighborhood is broken. So I see the rules that you consider neighborhood like as a one entity, and also there is no natural boundary. So I have a map with me. There are only some houses. I would suggest that those houses be zoned to Colony Meadows. So Colony Bend is a very good school, but it will provide, Colony Meadows is relatively better than that. So it will provide an opportunity for the students who are living in those few houses of the Wood Stream section to attend Colony Meadows, and no transportation is required, nothing. They are very close to it. And it is in the map. If you want, I can leave the map.
Thank you. If you can give it to Mrs. Kaiser, who's right behind you. Thank you.
Okay, and again, I would like, I think the community is very fortunate to have all of you at the leadership positions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Dr. Caitlin Anderson. Is Dr. Anderson here tonight? Okay, well, she turns up. We'll go back to her. The next speaker is Tammy Campbell. Tammy Campbell here. Oh, yep, she is. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, distinguished board members, and Dr. Charles Dupree, every day we hear about partners in crime in the news and glorified TV programs, but rarely do we hear about school and community engagement partners. As the Executive Director of the Honey Brown Hope Foundation, I'm pleased to acknowledge our partner in education, Superintendent Dr. Dupree, for leading the charge in promoting community engagement and partnership in our schools. We were encouraged by the district Genuine Community Engagement Partnership to present our recent History Talks program at Thurgood Marshall High School. The program was in observation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It features Sarah Collins Rudolph, the sole survivor of the 5 little girls in the 1963 Birmingham church bombing. We were pleased to have board member Toscan and you, Superintendent Dupree, join us. The program was designed to provide students with an opportunity to connect with our history today. During the event, Marshall High School students participated and were engaged in the program. ROTC presented the colors, the school award-winning choir performed, the students operated the sound system, and the school's cheerleaders issued the Honey Brown Hope Foundation Don't Be Blind to Injustice Challenge. This genuine community engagement was a mutually beneficial collaboration that provided students with firsthand knowledge of the Civil Rights Act struggles that led to the signing of the Civil Rights Act. We at the Honey Brown Hope Foundation are pleased to recognize our following distinguished partners in education: Susan Wardowski, Social Studies Coordinator; Nancy Coward, Secondary Social Studies Coordinator; Thurgood Marshall High School Assistant Principal Felicia James; Thurgood High School Principal Church Gassett, for sharing, demonstrating, and executing commitment to our History Talk presentation for the betterment of our students. This dynamic team worked like a well-oiled machine. I tell you, there was no complaints, and everything was just smooth running. Now, I would like for you to join me in thanking these exceptional educators and administrators. Would you come up, please? First, we have Ms. Susan Wardowski. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Wardowski.
Wardowski, right? Oh, excellent. I've been practicing on that and didn't get it right. For your commitment to and collaboration on the History Talks program at Thurgood Marshall High School, we thank you. We thank you for the time that you gave and the commitment. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. All right.
All right, so
Now,
Ms. Campbell, if
others
you could,
read the same, so we will acknowledge the names. Nancy Coward, Cosette Church Gaston, received by Miss James Felicia and Miss James Felicia. So I wrapped that up in 30 seconds, right?
perfect, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, Ms. Campbell, for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Mr. Stuart Jackson.
Hi, Board. I addressed you guys 2 months ago and presented several common sense policies to this Board. I'm going to read because I got 3 minutes. So.
Good idea.
Aimed at strengthening the academy programs and reducing the emotions in this boardroom. I want to thank the Board for the opportunity to follow up on that presentation today. I also want to thank the administration for their reversal on the academies. We believe academies are a critical part of the educational system in Fort Bend County, and we look forward to working with the administration to strengthen these programs. Since my last visit with you guys, I encapsulated the proposals that I provided in that meeting in a petition and put that online to gauge community support. That petition was put online on September 7th. We could only manage to find 623 contacts. We now have 1,450 signatures. So a lot of word of mouth has gotten out, a lot of support for these policies that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And a lot of them are from realtors, former students, non-academy people, and teachers. And I've talked to most of the people on the board, as well as most of the administration, about these policies. Fairly simple, and we talked about it in here before, grandfathering. I think we need a 3-year grandfathering. If we grandfather the feeders as well as we grandfather the academies, it should work fairly seamlessly. And resource maintenance. I believe the administration, when they talked about the closure of the academies, they supported most of these requests. We request that the board and the administration consider adopting these in writing so that we can actually have some predictability and we don't have so much emotion in this boardroom all the time. We recognize there will be challenges. More medium to long-term planning is required. I would also argue, though, that previous boards knew about the problems that we face today and chose to do nothing about them, which resulted in the urgency of these situations today. Planning with feeders and academies cannot be done in isolation. When considering together the proposed policies, pressure is immediately reduced and the emotion is largely removed. And we need to implement matrix to determine the success or failure of all programs. You can't control what you can't measure. These policies will reduce the emotion in this boardroom and during elections because parents would know what to expect when they registered for a program or moved into a neighborhood. If they put their kids into a school, they'd know what to expect as far as their kids completing that school or if they sign up for any of the programs. We've got a lot of issues. I fully support what you guys are doing with HB 5. I think the plan was amazing, with the exception of the
30
closure of
seconds.
the academies. And I would also add, since I got an extra 30 seconds here, on the 10%, I did read the 10%, the law related to 10%, and the administration has a lot of discretion as to how they define that top 10%. You could exclude academies from it. You could put all the academy students into a separate group for the 10% without having to co-locate them. And I finally add that my daughter has gotten straight A's her first year at Clemens, and she's not in the 10%, and we want her to stay there, and she wants to stay there, okay? So it's not all about the 10%. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. All right, our next speaker tonight is a name that I'm not going to be able to pronounce. I'm just going to confess that to you right now. It's VJ, might be a good start. And then I would really like, since he knows who he is, if he could say his last name. There's a lot of letters in it.
Respected Board of Trustees and Dr. Dupree, my name is Vijay Anand Tirunageshwaram.
I was not going to get that, but thank you.
I can see that. So I am part of one among the 6,000 residents of Riverstone growing community. We were talked to Dr. Dupree. We were given a chance or opportunity to talk to Dupree 2 weeks ago about a report which we made about the gap analysis of the Elkins feeder pattern and Elkins alternative feeder pattern. And we urged Dr. Dupree to consider feeding the ES 47, Riverstone Elementary School, to Fort Settlement. And after seeing today's proposal, we were really happy that our voice has been heard. And we really felt confident that Fort Bend ISD administration, the statement saying your voice matters, really helped. And I'd like to thank Dr. Dupree for giving the opportunity as a community to hearing us out, and also like to thank the board, seeing that they felt our feelings, the comments we sent, that really matters to us. Because sending an empty mail and nobody reads about it, it doesn't go anywhere. So it felt that our heartfelt comments are reaching somewhere. I just want to go over the same scenario B, which was suggested by Dr. Leopold. He didn't mention anything about First Colony was the scenario alternate A, and now scenario B is the forced settlement. I just want to go over that. It makes sense, being scenario B, that the Fort Bend ISD saves $2 million by keeping the forced settlement feeder pattern for Riverstone community, because we are not adding 200 seats in the First Colony. So, and also, it makes sense that keeping the forced settlement, the utilization factor is all 80%, 85% on both the First Colony and forced settlement. So, and also the traffic concern. Right now, Riverstone doesn't have a direct pathway. Even if this is going to be after 2 years, still there's going to be 8 stop signs the parents has to pass through from Riverstone going to First Colony. So that needs to be considered as one of the major headbugs. So even though it's in the scenario B, I know
30 seconds.
we know that it is not a set in stone until the board votes. We want the board to be considering these aspects, and I have given the report, we give it to you guys. Please consider this, and thank you again for you all taking our feedback and taking direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thanks for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Rujing O. That was less letters, but I still may not have gotten it correct. Oh, good.
Last name is O. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you tip the microphone a little towards you so we can hear you?
First of all, I really appreciate the Fallback ISD superintendent, the admin group, and the board member can listen to community feedback and make the change to the original feeder patterns. We really appreciate that, and I'm very glad that I'm living in the Fallback ISD with an excellent management group. So as a group of the residents in Claremont High School, we use the same PASA data that the John Richter used to calculate the utilization rate of Claremont High School. We draw the conclusion that if we use the original planned scenario A, not only Claremont will be overcrowded, but also it will be the high school version of Commonwealth Elementary School. Its utilization will reach 123%. Even without the loft apartment, the utilization rate can reach 117%. So it's very possible for the school to close the involvement in the near future. The detailed data report has been submitted to superintendent and the board president to review. At the same time, we also find out that by 2019, Cheryl's high school utilization is only 67%, and Austin High will also be underutilized. Looks like the original proposal of zooming Cornerstone to Clements is just for leaving the room for the Aliana builders. We, as the taxpayer, should not suffer all this unfairness just for the vacant land for the house builder. Fortunately, thanks the effort of a superintendent, the admin group, and board president, we see the reasonable resume proposal, scenario B, today. We think this is a very good proposal. It prevents Claremont from overcrowding, protect the Telfair students' safety by not letting them cross Highway 59. Let Telfair students stay with their middle school friends in Austin High School. We hope the board can vote for scenario B in January 2015.
30 seconds.
Thanks for listening to community feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker tonight is Ambrish Sundaram. No? Oh, there he is. He was in the hall.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good
Yeah.
evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the proposals on feeder patterns. I'll try and be as concise as I can. I have communicated with all the members of the board, so I appreciate Ms. James in particular. Thank you for your response. While in general, the proposal around Riverstone being zoned into the different schools under the new proposals is pretty good. My concern is very specifically around Creekstone Village and Brookside being zoned into Settlers Way and being zoned into First Colony Middle School. The logic has to be consistent. If we are saying that Creekstone Village needs to stay in Settlers Way because we are already zoned into Settlers Way, then let's use that same logic for middle school too, because we are zoned into Fort Settlement right now. Why are we being moved to a different school? We need to apply a consistent logic. The drive time from Creekstone to Fort Settlement is definitely much lower than the drive time from Creekstone to First Colony. Same way, the drive time from Creekstone to Elementary School 47, which is the new one being built, is much shorter than the drive time to Settlers Way. So I would strongly urge the administration and the board to consider amending the proposal to allow residents of Creekstone Village and Brookside to be zoned into Elementary School 47 and into Fort Settlement Middle School. My experience tells me that the administration and the Board of Trustees is willing to listen to concerns of the community and is willing to take appropriate action to address those. I sincerely hope that the board and the administration will continue to demonstrate the same level of commitment and resolve this issue in favor of the impacted families. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And our next speaker, now, remember the rules. Our next speaker is, I'm not going to know this name either, but Mushan Fang. Did I say it right? Oh, please help me.
Mushan Fang.
Okay. Well, I wasn't going to get that either.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for the opportunity for us to voice our concern. I'm Mushan Fang from Crestone Village. Today, we sincerely, respectfully request you include Crestone Village into and Bonsai into ES 47 and let us continue to fit into Fort Settlement Middle School. We have collected more than 700 signatures for the petition in only 1 week and have received great support from our other Riverstone residents. We believe Crestone and Bonsai kids should go to ES 47 and Fort Settlement Middle for the following reasons. Firstly, Crestone Village is the largest subdivision in Riverstone. It's ironic that the largest group of Riverstone kids could not go to our Riverstone Elementary. But the apartment units who do not pay the tax, they go to our school. And we have 600 houses in our whole subdivision. And the apartment complex have more than 600 units. We are currently living in this community, but their construction even have not complete yet. It's very unfair and unreasonable for us to be kicked out of our elementary and let those people who do not pay the tax come to our elementary school. Secondly, the two subdivisions are only 2 miles away from ES 47, with only 3 stop signs, versus 4 miles to Settlers Way Elementary with 9 stop signs. Please let our kids go to the closer schools. Thirdly, we understand you have concerns regarding the potential crowded issue in ES 47 and Fort Settlement Middle if our kids go to these 2 schools. However, based on our research, we think your data overestimate the number of our households and school kids in our subdivision. Your data shows we will have 155 new houses constructed in the coming 1 year. However, our subdivision is almost complete. We have only 72 new houses left. Currently, the 2 subdivisions totally have 240 elementary school kids. Your data shows
30 seconds.
We will eventually have 350 elementary school kids. I have a handout. Please check the handouts for the detailed data. Today, most of our Riverstone residents here in this room, they take a few hours off and wait for here for more than 5 hours. Why? We care. We care our community. We care our kids. Please take our consideration seriously. Please let our kids come to Riverstone Elementary and Fort Settlement. For the ones who support this application, please stand up.
Time.
Thank you.
Your time, ma'am. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Mimi Von Hahn.
I don't want to be so loud in the mic. Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Dupree, Madam President, and FBISD board members. My name is Mimi Hahn. I'm a resident of Riverstone, and I want to say thank you so much for involving us in this very thoughtful and long process. We really do appreciate you all listening to us and giving us the opportunity to be part of the survey and to be part of the community dialogue and to speak tonight. We are delighted to know that Riverstone ES 47 Elementary School we're hoping that it will be zoned to Fort Settlement. We saw the new Plan B and we agree with Plan B. We know that having Riverstone ES 47 zoned to Fort Settlement follows FBISD policy. And why is that? Because our kids will be traveling less. It's a much shorter distance for our children to attend Fort Settlement than for our children to be bused to First Colony. That's going to save taxpayers dollars, and also it's going to not overutilize First Colony. Now, if 100% of children of Riverstone ES 47 were to be zoned to First Colony, that's going to overutilize that school, and that's going to cost taxpayers millions of dollars in additional funds. Why would we do that? We have the capacity at Fort Settlement. We have the ability to make sure that our kids are safer. It's a safer school for our children because they will be traveling in less in distance. We know that looking at the data only, you know, if you're speaking strictly on data and not emotions, ES 47 Fort Settlement is the right school to be zoned to Fort Settlement. We appreciate you all tonight and including us in the community feedback because we're all here standing shoulder to shoulder. This actually brought all of Riverstone residents together because we care about our schools, we care about our children. We know that saving taxpayers' money is in the best interest of all children. It is in the best interest of all of us to have our kids go to Fort Settlement because we're not expending extra millions of dollars in building out First Colony or putting trailers in there. We are a big community, and we know that Fort Settlement can
30
house
seconds.
all of our children. It's also going to be keeping up with the neighborhood concept. We will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder and give our feedback in December and in January. We thank you so much for giving us this opportunity tonight. And we support Plan B. We support Riverstone ES 47 to zone to Fort Settlement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. All right, our next speaker tonight is Chetan Dave. Oh, yeah, sorry.
It is Dave. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to thank Dr. Dupre and Mrs. James for listening to the community feedback, and we support the withdrawal of the proposals to shut down the academies. A community dialogue that preceded the facilities plan was world-class, and it was an example of engagement and collaboration. The result was that the bond issue was widely supported and passed. I wonder why the similar engagement did not precede the recommendation to Academy to close the academies rather than follow them. I would encourage that you engage us more. Looking forward, however, Academy parents stand ready to constructively engage with the administration and the board. We recognize that some changes in any program are inevitable and ultimately healthy. We need to create an institutional mechanism that would be useful for us now as well as benefit future parents and future board members. My proposal is that the administration create an Academy task group that works collaboratively with an Academy parent group. We propose that an Academy parent group would consist of 2 parent nominees from each of the academies who would serve as a forum and a channel for working with you very closely, and would also serve as a sounding board and a channel for feedback as well as communication. My second point is about the restoration of trust. Last year, a recommendation was made to change the transportation for Academy students that would have effectively killed the academies. Thankfully, the administration listened to a strong and adverse community reaction, and a win-win compromise was reached. Taken together with the latest recommendation that was ultimately withdrawn, it is hard not to connect the dots and conclude that the academies are under a sustained attack. In the absence of any objective measure of success or failure of academies or any other program, these actions are breeding speculations about personal agendas. We don't think that those are at play. However, we want to thank the board members who have lent us their ear and listened to us. We've been reasonable and professional in all our previous presentations, and will continue to do so. However, we must talk about the pink elephant in the room. There is a perception, rightly or wrongly, in the community that certain board members do not favor academies. And specifically, some members are driving the agenda to shut down academies and GSA in particular. I'm not saying these are correct, but it is important to recognize that the perception does exist. Left unaddressed, this sort of perception can undermine even well-meaning actions and feed cynicism. I have served on school boards before, and I have even participated in a search for a superintendent. I know how vital it is to be and to be perceived to be fair and open-minded. To that, especially in a diverse district like ours, I would not have brought this up in this forum, but we have not been able to communicate with all the members that are on this board. We would again like to you to listen, and we will meet you more than halfway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Nanda Vura. Vura?
Superintendent Dr. Dupre, esteemed Board of Trustees, thanks for the opportunity. I am Nanda Vura, father of 2 kids who are in FBISD school academies, Dulles and Elkins. I am speaking on behalf of Dulles Math and Science Academy Booster Club, where I serve as a vice president today. I thank the FBISD administration for listening to the voice of concerned parents, teachers, students, and taking a right decision which will help FBISD achieve its stated core beliefs and commitments. The core belief that all students can reach their full potential, and commitment that FBISD will provide an educational system that will enable all students to reach their full potential. FBISD academies are helping students reach their full potential. So they are in line with your core beliefs and commitments. I would like to state that, as again I speak on behalf of the Academy Booster Club, and all of the Booster Club, I think Chetan touched a few points here. We are committed in helping the district with a strategy which would support the coexistence of an academy system and the House Bill 5 program, ensuring that all students in FBISD can continue to reach their full potential. Here I would like to highlight some of the activities that the Dulles Math and Science Academy students are already involved in with the non-academy students because they coexist. They have started an after-school class for non-academy kids to help with various STEM subjects. They have volunteered many hours at coaching classes to teach non-academy students. They have helped to improve AP and several other standardized scores for non-academy kids too. They help to retain good teachers. Without them, some of the courses couldn't be continued. Actually, I had to change my rest of the speech after hearing to Dr. Dupre's explanation of what happened and what will happen. And especially, I am pleasantly surprised with the openness with which the Board of Trustees have commented around academies. So again, and it might have been a perception that was out there, which is very different from what I've seen. So again, we are all reasonable. We understand that everybody can't think same and we'll have different opinions. But what I saw here was, there was, I think, an openness to give a chance for reasoning. You all want to really think through it and make the right decision.
30 seconds.
And last thing I would like to say is, let's get away from this myth of, academies, they versus me, or, let's not divide and rule or do anything like this. Let's do good for everybody. So I think there is scope to, not leave any child behind, help every student and every child. So academies are this, whatever 10%, let us help them too. They all can coexist and we can be the best school district in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Our next speaker is Iram Kazimi.
Good evening, Dr. Dupree, Madam President, and the Board of Trustees. I just wanted to thank you first for the opportunity to be heard tonight. I know that everyone's working really late hours, and we sincerely appreciate your dedication to really solving difficult issues, to take the best interest of all the children at heart. I speak tonight not only as a mother of 3 children who are in the schools in Fort Bend, but one of them is a rising freshman. And I speak more importantly as a professional who is dedicated every day to developing and working with the well-being of children and adolescents. I feel compelled to speak tonight because I believe very strongly that going to school is not just an academic experience. We really are developing a whole child. And I know that Mr. Burdine said that earlier, and I truly believe that. And I really just wanted to encourage everyone that I am just really, I think we should all be mindful of our language, and I'm just appalled at the way that some things have progressed. And I'm really appreciative that the board has really refocused on energy, on kind of being very reasonable and looking at things objectively. I wanted to share one of my biggest concerns. I have an 8th grader who's going to 9th grade, and his personal experience right now is he chose not to go to Quail Valley GT Academy. And he's very happy not going there. But One of the things that I've learned is that some of the competing schools focus on his school, and they're coached by some of the teachers that we're after you or after your school. And I think that's a very unhealthy environment. So as we're looking at the academies, I think we really just need to reevaluate what certain middle schools also offer. The reality is there are certain middle schools that offer an unfair advantage to other children. And they are not true GT students in the sense that there's a Dallas Math and Science Academy, there's other academies across the school. They use standardized measures like the Stanford 10 to truly identify talents. And I don't think that we're doing that. And I think we're setting up some children to take classes and we're giving them an unfair advantage. Spanish has been brought up, biology has been brought up. So we're really preloading these students' GPA when they get to the academies. And this is the problem that kind of carries over when you go to the high school. You have academies and you have students that come in with almost an entire year of AP classes. That's not fair to the students who chose to stay at their neighborhood schools. And I think that we really need to just really evaluate that. The other concern is, I don't think anyone has ever said that they disagree with the existence of an academy. I think we just
30
need to look at
seconds.
the validity of the academy. By that, what I mean is, are there really standards that make it an outstanding academy? For example, you have some academies that require 4-year classes. The GSA does not. Instead, you have special opportunities that are given to a select group of students that should be open to everyone. The Princeton Race Relations experience is just one example, and I'd like you to kind of look at the website to see what things are advertised to specific students. So thank you again, and I really just hope that we look at the academies in a very objective way.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, our next to speak, please. We have 10 more to go, so we could be good to keep going. Our next speaker is Ki Wong. Don't know if that person here. There are a lot of people standing up. Okay, I'm moving on. Rodrigo, Mr. Carrion, you are next.
Okay, my name is Rodrigo Carrion. Well, to prohibit this from happening and withholding the audience from speaking and skipping, you guys skip from 5 to 6. I believe that item number 6, conversation needs to be put at the bottom of the list. That way we can go fast through our agenda, public agenda, and hear through. And then if we need to stay overtime and go through the private closed session, well, we can speak all you need. And that's the purpose of rethinking, that relates to item 12 on the agenda, review future meeting agenda items. Well, that's one issue that I'm concerned. And then also my other issue is item 10D, consider approval of the Fort Bend ISD calendar 2015 and 16 year. Well, my issue is, for August 13 and 14, the district professionally learning what? Hopefully they're learning and educating our First Amendment right, and spreading out the word and communicating with the public, which is very important, which benefited the school district in bringing out the vote for people to vote to pass this bond. So that needs to take more seriously also. And then also item 10F, well, I support your decision for item F to implement the emission reduction plan. Hopefully all local officials will take it seriously and take it into consideration to our lawmakers, state and national federal lawmakers, to what? To reduce health costs, improve health. Improving health will reduce the health costs for what? For we can use more fundings and government fundings for our improve education. That's the way to go do it. See, that's what our President Obama's doing. What? Global 8, Global 20, on the other side of the world in China, communicating with the rest of the world. Hey, let's cut our emission, climate change, which relates to this kind of issue. So I support more buses with neutral gas burning and prohibit diesel burning, which is more polluted, more dangerous to the public health. So it's very beneficial. So our state of Texas next legislation should take it seriously and communicate with them. Our state lawmakers see are they willing to list or not. It's time for us to vote them out the next session. And it's very important. So it's very important for our voices to be heard. And also, an example that we need to share with our lawmakers. Look, California, I believe the city of Beverly passed in a soda tax, 1 cent per ounce, was that to fight obesity. Fight obesity, bring down health costs, which we're having a problem here in the state of Texas and nationally and globally. And not only that.
30 seconds.
Good. The nation south of the border, Mexico, they proposed a soda tax also to fight obesity and help fund education. So it's very important to reduce the health costs by providing more healthy options to people. It would be their choice. It's not the government's choice. It was a big choice to buy or not this junk food or soda tax and all that. And that's why Coca-Cola is taking it globally and reducing their sugar in their sodas because they have felt the heat that we put on them, so we need to carry it on.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our next speaker is Cheryl Tannehill. Moving on, next speaker, Prashani, maybe Gajwani. Is that
right?
Did I?
Good evening. I know it's late, Dr. Dupree and the board members. You guys have done a fantastic job. I'm here to thank you. Today, for the first time, I feel I've been heard. We've been here for about a year. I've talked against GSA for a year. I've researched personally. I've spent time. There's not a single academy like GSA across the country. It's a backdoor entry to Clements. It is what it is. Let's be frank and call it what it is. I tried to read into the history of it, how it came about, and that's again some amazing facts come about. It was GLA, and then suddenly unilaterally, without the community dialogue, it was converted into GSA. And nobody thought about the ramifications of that academy. So Dave, I really thank you. My kid is in the boat right now, and Mr. George, you should understand the ramifications of this academy. So I would not suggest having a strategy group at this point. I think the decision has to be made like yesterday. If we need to consolidate academies, which is a fantastic idea, 110% agree with it, it needs to be done as of yesterday. It needs to stop affecting our kids as of tomorrow. I think moving them under one roof is a win-win situation for all. That way we go away from the whole argument of grandfathering. The district doesn't have to have two different academies. We don't have to duplicate resources. I think it's a win-win situation for all. Academies get to have the best. This will help the other academies as well. And I think, just like the MBAs is, there's cross-pollination of ideas that happen. And there'll be a win-win situation for all. So I really want to thank the board members today. I think it's the first time, I personally believe it takes a village to raise a child, all right? This battle was really frustrating. For last 1 year, we've been here, several of us, over and over again. And I can tell you, a lot of us were thinking about selling and moving our houses if our voices weren't heard. This has really, gone too far for too long. Our kids are struggling every day. And the ramifications of this backdoor entry GSA has really, we are paying the prices right now. So I really appreciate what I heard today, and I hope that you guys will make it a priority and consolidate them ASAP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our next speaker is Nitesh Mehta.
For giving me the opportunity to speak. I almost forgot my speech has been just so long, but anyway, since last few months, almost a year, I've been listening a lot about community feedback, community input, community dialogue. So the common denominator is being community. And community at Clements High School has been coming here for like almost a year and asking you people to do something about the academy, either rank them differently or move them to some other place. And now, after so long, I think maybe you people are now listening what we have been saying for almost a year. So like what Prasad just said, it should have been done a long time ago rather than waiting and seeing what will happen, what will not happen. So I would really appreciate that you people really look into it and act on it fast and get it done. And the second thing is, I have twins who are now sophomore at Clements, and I asked them, how many students are really GSA students are in your class, and they may say only 1 and 2. So maybe are they being segregated into just one class, or are they offered something that my kids are not? I have no way of knowing. So I would really appreciate if you look into it and see if they are preferred or given more opportunities than my kids are given. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Shunong Wong. Maybe it's Wang. Anybody? All right. David Bandel. In the back row.
Dr. Dupree, esteemed members of the board, it's always a pleasure. You know, you have a lot on your plates with feeder patterns and academies and everything else, but I'd like to throw one more thing on that plate. That's something that I hope you will consider, or at least have some dialogue with the community, and that is with school hours. Right now, as you know, the high schools start first, then the middle schools, and the elementary schools last. I've read a number of articles and recent studies. I am not in a position to evaluate any of those for their validity or their accuracy, but they suggest that, in fact, the students do better, high school students do better, the grades go up, and things like morning traffic accidents involving teenagers goes down. And these both are good things, obviously. Anecdotal evidence, in my house, I'm usually finishing my coffee by 5:30 in the morning. And I know my little tornadoes that were tearing through the house, I said, can't you guys at least wait until I finish my coffee? Now, this is when they're little. They're ready to be in school, I mean, early. My high school daughter right now, I watch her at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, she's getting her breakfast, getting ready to go out to the school bus. Lights are on, but nobody's awake. I doubt she's awake by third period. Now, I know that this is not a small change. I mean, this is going to impact a lot of things. But we're already going to be changing bus schedules, bus routes, and everything else. It's going to impact that if we do this, if we do a switch like this. So it might as well incorporate it into some of these things with the feeder patterns now rather than later, because I believe any advantage we can give to our kids, and if this can help them, the high school students, obviously, because their circadian rhythms are different, now they've changed, that this would be a good thing to do. So I think this is one more thing that I'd really like to just throw out there on your plate, and maybe we can come to some dialogue with the community, because it will affect a lot of things, including morning schedules, afternoon schedules, sports, everything. So
30 seconds.
I don't say this lightly, but please consider this as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. Okay, our next speaker is Mahesh Iyer.
That was pretty good. He's a tough act to follow.
I think if your penmanship improved, I would have been able to get it even more accurately.
Another
sorry,
reason
sir.
for
Go ahead. I know.
And thanks for hearing me out. You know, when the process started, you had outlined originally that you wanted a long-term solution to consider how to, look at the feeder patterns, and you encouraged everyone to be really focused on those feedback surveys and provide those feedback, provide the community feedback, and go through what you outlined to be, a well thought out proposal. I'm here from Telfair, and if you look at our feeder pattern on the scenario B that you outlined, or the scenario A, when you look at those factors, the nearest high school to us is Clemens High School. And so I think many of us were initially very supportive of the plan to zone us to Clemens, because if you go through that, what you outline as your own factors on the attendance zones, if you take out the one factor of transportation need, because I think any high school for our area is more than 2 miles, that all the factors we met, like head and shoulders, we met those factors. And Clemens really fit that profile. And so we thought, along the feedback that you were looking for, our community provided that through those surveys. And then, when the announcement came out the other day that you were rethinking things, all of a sudden, a few days later, there's another scenario that comes out that has a zone to another school. I think by the board zone discussion earlier, it was clear, on the one hand, you're looking for a longer-term plan where you don't have to be back here in a few years, and you're trying to balance that with community feedback, and I get that. But finding a long-term solution is not always the easiest to do. And if you can focus on that long-term solution, I think you're going to be better off. If you look at 10 years ago, where the center point of the population for this county, I'm sure you're going to find that it was very different than what it is now. And if you're always focusing on we can't ever change anything, you're never going to get to that point. And in a few years, you're going to be back here, and then those of us who are then zoned to Austin might run into the same situation, and we have an overcrowding situation there. I would encourage you to relook at this and consider for Telfair on your own attendance zone factors and what you're looking at, where we stand out, and give it some thought between now and January to see whether you can still reincorporate us within that first scenario, because I think that was really important for many of us. You're doubling the distance for us to go to a high school compared to everyone else. So if you're going to take in neighborhood inclusion as a factor, you're leaving us out on scenario B, when that would naturally be there to be considered. So I'm also a little bit more surprised in terms of the nature of the feedback. I mean, we did follow exactly what you wanted in terms of the surveys, but we're also seeing that you want emails or you don't want emails. So I think it is helpful if you can be a little bit more clear as how you want that feedback back. What's the most constructive way to do it? So if you're saying the surveys, I would encourage you to focus on the surveys. Thank you.
Time.
Thank you, sir, very much. Our next and our final speaker, unless Dr. Anderson has come, is Tony George.
Very good evening. Respected FBIST board team, my name is Tony George. Unfortunately, I live in a Creekstone village. I'm sorry to say that unfortunately, because this is the second time I'm here. First time I was here for the Elkins transport issue to Creekstone village. Anyway, that is a closed chapter. So this time the school is running a new feeder pattern. So I have 3 kids. One is in high school, one is in a middle school, one is only 4 years, she's in a pre-K. So now she's going to Settlers Way. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes when she sees the Riverstone Elementary School, and if she asks me that, hey dad, what this school for? Why I'm not here? Why should I tell her? I'm living in a Riverstone. I'm a Riverstone resident. So I'm supposed to get a Riverstone Elementary School for my kids. When I signed home contract, the builder told me that you will have your own school here in Riverstone. But this policy, this decision, that's totally, to me, that's unfair and injustice. So what I am trying to say, trying to make you understand, is that the Board of Trustees and the Superintendent, the Fort Bend ISD team should understand and consider our request. And we are not looking for any favorable decision, but we need justice. Since I am a Riverstone resident, we need justice. So we are here. A lot of my friends are here for the same concern. So please consider us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. All right, that concludes our audience items. So now our next item on our agenda is board members' reports. Mrs. Bailey, can you please share with us the board activity?
I will. I'll try to make it really exciting, too.
I know, because our audience is leaving.
Okay.
You can talk while they're
No, I was going to, make it stay a little bit longer. Okay. We were busy this past month also. We attended Internal Audit Committee meeting, Central Fort Bend Chamber Leadership Session on Education, Fort Bend Strong Celebration, UIL Region Choir Concert, Touchdown Club Luncheon, Gulf Coast Association of School Boards meeting, Science National Honor Society meeting, and Math National Honor Society meeting at Elkins High School. Playoff games, the Ridge Point and the Elkins. Congratulations, Ridge Point. Varsity football games, feeder pattern and boundary town hall meetings, 3rd grade Space Jam music program at Lexington Creek Elementary School, School Health Advisory Council meeting, bond presentation, boy, that seems a long time ago, at Oyster Creek Rotary Club, Austin versus Alvin playoff volleyball game, Academic Excellence Awards at Bush High School, bilateral U.S. Arab Chamber of Commerce Education Roundtable, Fort Bend Education Foundation Board Meeting, Leadership 101 Kickoff Day, Ropes Course, Middle School Volleyball District Tournament, Quail Valley Elementary School Visit, Community Dialogue Meetings, and Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce Education Division November meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Do we have any special reports by any trustees? All right. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the previous meetings, purchases over $50,000, donations exceeding $10,000, the calendar for the 2015-2016 school year, a resolution having to do with a walking track at Brazos Bend Elementary, a resolution to implement emission reduction actions, an affiliation agreement between the Golf Course Workforce Board and Fort Bend ISD, an intergovernmental cooperation agreement amendment between Fort Bend ISD and Texas Health and Human Services Commission, PDOS appraiser approval, and the superintendent evaluations instrument as we revised it at our workshop.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda, items 10A through 10J as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Toscano for approval of the consent agenda as presented. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Item 10F, consider adoption of resolution to implement emission reduction actions. I guess as the one who's been pushing this, thanks to the folks in Max's team and Mr. Bassett. Of course, when I originally came up with this, it had nothing to do with emissions reductions. It was more, should have brought my polar bear. Sorry, Rodrigo left, but it was actually to increase the demand for natural gas. But you know, I guess we can accomplish both. So I applaud you doing this. And again, the only thing I want to comment on is that I hope that, you know, we will work with the surrounding governmental agencies to make sure that we can get some cooperation on that gas supply, so that we're not duplicating things among every little government entity. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Do we have any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, then please vote. The consent agenda passes, and we're on to action. Action item 11A is the comprehensive annual financial report. Do we have a presentation, Dr. Dupree, Mr. Bassett?
Yes, we have Chris Bro with Whitley Penn, our audit partner, to share a brief presentation with the board.
Mr. Morris, do we need to have a motion before this presentation? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bro.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Dupree. We have a presentation in front of you for the results of the audit as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2014. I believe you have the comprehensive annual financial report. We're going to hit just the highlights of this report. First highlight I'd like to point out is our opinion on the financial statements, which are unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance we can give, that we say the financial statements, in our opinion, are materially correct. The audit was conducted in accordance with governmental auditing standards. Let's take a look here at your condensed statement of net position. This is your government-wide financial statements. This is everything you own versus everything you owe. The comparison for the 2 years, 2014 and 2013. You ended the year with $1.3 billion worth of assets. 925 million of that was in capital assets. Those are schools, land, buses, and the like. You had long-term liabilities totaling $1 billion, and that brought you to a total net position of $310 million. 191 million of that was unrestricted and available for use for the activities of the district. Your bonded debt at the end of the year was $940 million. It started out at $978 million. You had additions of $80 million and retired $118 million. That's a lot of activity during the year. That was due to your refunding during the year. So about a $20 million decrease during the year. If I look at that, that's actually close to $40 million in a decrease if I do the math right on that. Your capital debt at the end of the year was general obligation bonds of $858 million and deferred amounts of $82 million. And these are amounts of premiums and the like related to your bonds. The important thing to note here is that your ratio of net bonded debt to total assessed value is at 3%, down from 3.4% last year. So this is an improvement and something to think about. If we look here, you'll see some debt ratios. The green line is your debt per student, and that is on your right-hand side. You see the debt per student hit its high point, looks like in about 2011, just under $16,000 per student. And 2014, at the end of the year, you're somewhere below $14,000. So moving in the right direction there. Debt to valuation numbers, looks like you hit a high point in about 2008, above 3.5%, probably close to 3.75%. This year, you are down to, that ratio should be 3% in the blue as we move forward. We have some comparisons here between some other districts in the area. Fort Bend ISD is the green graph here for your debt per student comparisons. You have Alief ISD on the bottom there. That's a district that's not growing. They've stayed right at 40,000 for a number of years, and that just gives you a feel for what happens if you don't grow. And the other ones, Cy-Fair, Katy, and Lamar, are all fast growth districts. You can see you're below your debt per student comparisons on all of these. Debt to valuation comparisons, you again are in the green, and you can see your numbers are trending in a positive manner, especially as you compare those to Cy-Fair, Katy, and Lamar Consolidated. This is your statement of activity to give you a feel for the size of the activity that's going on. You had total revenues of the year of $668 million and total expenses of $629 million, an increase in your net position of $39 million, again coming to that $310 million figure we saw on the first slide. Your governmental expenses by function, we see here instruction was at 59%, 58.68%. This is your governmental numbers. This includes everything. Again, not your general or your general fund numbers, which you're probably used to seeing. But you have instructional at 58.68%, instructional leadership at 6%. We have some student support, and something to point out, your general administrative cost is about 1.8%. Fund balance comparison for the general funds and other funds. Your general fund balance stayed relatively the same, right at $170 million from 2013 to 2014. The largest change came in your unassigned fund balance, which actually increased about $11 million during the year. So that is money that is not otherwise committed or restricted in your fund balance at the end of the year. Your other governmental funds increased slightly, and you can see the different categories in that. The largest increase appears to be in the debt service and the committed funds. You did have some construction fund monies which were spent down during the year. Unassigned general fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures has remained somewhere between 25 and 30% for the last few years. That looks pretty stable, climbing just a little bit. That's about where you want to be in these numbers. Again, this is a percentage of your total expenditures in the general fund. On required communications, we had no significant audit adjustments this year. Audit differences, we noted no material weaknesses or significant control deficiencies, and we noted no non-compliance with matters to report to the board or the administration. I want to point out the status of the prior year findings. Last year, 2013, you had excess fund balance in the Child Nutrition Fund. That meant your Child Nutrition Fund, the largest chain restaurant in Fort Bend County, is doing very well. What the plan is at the federal level is to pour that money back into the program, and that's what you're doing. And this is a fairly typical situation that happens. You're being run rather efficiently, and now you have to pour this money back into the program, and you have actually put together two plans, the Texas Department of Agriculture, and are in the process of carrying out those plans to invest back into the program. The second item that was noted last year was special education maintenance of effort items. The Texas Education Agency has reviewed the finding from the prior year and has elected not to sustain the finding. So that one comes off the books, if you will, with your maintenance of effort. The state is going through a new process, and so 2014, I believe, will become your base year moving forward for maintenance of effort issues. That's a good thing. Last thing I have to talk to you about is some future changes in accounting principles. I know this is an exciting part of the presentation. Effective for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015, which you're in right now, you're going to have your slice of the teacher's retirement system pension liability on the face of your financial statements. And this is a new standard. It's going to be a number. Right now, the number looks to be, I think I have it right there, $67.8 million is a beginning number. That's going to come essentially from the notes of the financial statements to the front of the financial statements. When you see this next year, about this time, in your financial statements, know that this is not a new number that has just come up and a new liability that has sprung up on your financial statements. You are in your financial position. This will affect your unrestricted financial position at year end, and it'll cut it about in half. But that's a number that's out there, and now this is the way it's going to be reported. You're in a cost-sharing plan. If you wanted to pay off all of that at one time, you couldn't. It wouldn't make a bit of difference. You have amounts that you pay into this plan. It's run by the state, and your job is to pay money into that in proportion to the salaries that you pay. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Do we have any? Well, we have water coming down the line. Do we have any questions? For Mr. Breaux, do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve action item 11A, the comprehensive annual financial report as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have any conversation or questions for Mr. Breaux?
Yes, I would just like to thank, first of all, Mr. Breaux for your very nice presentation, and also Mr. Bassett for, even though you've been here a brief time, for pulling the financial report together in short order and careful stewardship of our financial resources that has allowed us to anticipate our revenue, give teachers raises, and keep our tax rate the same as it's been. And this report was reviewed and vetted by the audit committee, and in much more detail with Mr. Breaux and Mr. Bassett, And so I feel very comfortable, and I thank you, Mr. Bro, for many years of service to our school district. And it's good to know we're in such a good financial position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Do we have additional discussion? All right, and please vote. Thank you, Mr. Brody. Did you have?
Madam President, I believe Mr. Bassett would like to thank a few people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Very glad that you're here, Chris. We really appreciate your help. But I do want to recognize Ms. Edgar for being here, our Executive Director of Finance, and then also the primary responsibility for the development of the CAFR falls on the shoulders of Kelly Schlacks, and to have someone of her caliber here doing that, we're very fortunate indeed. So I want to recognize them.
I apologize for my oversight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Schlacks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bro, for being here tonight. Our next agenda item is the canvassing of the returns from the bond election on November 4th. I'll call upon you, Mr. Rice, for the motion.
Madam President, thank you. I move to approve the order canvassing returns and declaring results of the overwhelming approval of 73.6% in favor of the bond election passing November 4th, 2014.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mr. Rosenthal. Do we have any discussion? Very well. Please vote.
Thank you.
Motion passes, and I'd like to, while I'm sitting here and have a microphone, I'd like to thank Dr. Dupree and the administrative team for a very successful bond season. Thank you for bringing to us a referendum that had a lot of thought behind it, and we appreciate all your hard work in putting that together and bringing it to the community. And we thank the community for their affirmation of their vote and moving forward with the projects in our district. Now we're on to item 12, which is the future board meeting agenda items. Surely there can't be more.
Well, if the board is agreeable, I'll let you read this list rather than read it to you. I don't think there's anything new or surprising to you.
That sounds like a great idea. And we can send him our comments, I know, because he reads his email. We have questions or comments. All right, do we have any other business? Well, then you know what I need?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, ma'am, and guess
Second.
what I need? A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.